So let's continue with Canto II of the Divine Comedy and the Inferno section. Remember when we left off, Dante was trapped in this dark wood. He wants to approach some light that he sees at the top of the hill, and as he starts to try to climb that hill, he's blocked by three animals, and we talked about what those three animals might represent. To save him, Beatrice, his beloved, has sent down a guide named Virgil, and when we left Dante at the end of Canto I, he is agreeing to follow this guide Virgil, and Virgil has told him, it's like, hey, that's not the right way. Even though you want to get to the light, even though that's the place you want to be, that is a route, but that's not the right route for you. The right route for you is to go down. And what Virgil is going to suggest, and what we'll see as we start to move through these beginning parts of the cantos in the Inferno, is that Dante's movement downward is an attempt by Beatrice and by God to show Dante that in order to really truly be saved, in order to really truly get his heavenly reward, he has to confront his sinful nature. He has to confront what we all humans have to confront, which is those parts of ourselves that we're not comfortable with, those parts of ourselves that sometimes cause us embarrassment, may cause us shame, may cause us to kind of like cover up and delude ourselves into thinking that we may be someone or something that we're not. And so Dante is clearly, Dante the poet has set up this device for us through Virgil to guide him through this poetic journey that we talked about as being kind of this conceit that's running throughout the story. So I'm going to pick up with book 2 or canto number 2. Dante is following Virgil, and so the canto begins. Again, we'll be using the Mark Musa Divine Comedy translation. And so he says, "The day was fading and the darkening air was releasing all the creatures on the earth from their daily task, and I, one man alone, was making ready to endure the battle of the journey and of the pity it involved." Now, this will not be the last time that Dante uses the word pity, because it's a very key integral word throughout this entire work, particularly the Inferno. "It involved which my memory unerring it shall now retrace." So one thing I want you to remember as we kind of go through this is there are two Dantes. There's the pilgrim who is actually going through this travel, and then there's Dante the poet who is retelling the story for us. He's become the voice, he's become the vehicle. So they're two separate beings, even though they're both housed in the same person, Dante. "O muses, O high genius, help me now. O memory that wrote down what I saw, here your true excellence shall be revealed." Again, this is Dante the poet calling on the muses. Not unusual in an epic. We see it in Homer. That's how Homer opens his epic. "Then I began, O poet, come to guide me. Tell me if you think my worth sufficient before you trust me on this arduous road." And then Dante begins to talk to Virgil, who is the great poet of the Aeneid. And he says, you wrote about Aeneas and his adventures and his comrades. I do not feel worthy of this kind of journey. That was a great man who took this journey. I'm not up to it. I don't feel it. And what Dante's doing here, and one reason why I think this work is so important, is he connects to all of us. We have all felt that sense of doubt, that sense that we may not be worthy of the voyage that we have to go on in this life, and those little bitty moments of doubt sometimes create fear. Dante feels he lacks the courage. He doesn't feel like he has what it takes to get through this, and most of us can relate to that. There are times where we've been confronted by something that just seems too big and too much for us to take, and he's kind of pleading with Virgil. It's like, hey, maybe we should go back the other way, because it's I don't think I'm up to this. And so Virgil has got to reassure him, and he's got to tell him, okay, hey, there's something at work that's bigger than you. And so I'm going to skip a few lines. You can go back and read that, but I'm going to pick up at around line 31. Dante is continuing, and he says, look, who am I to do this? Who am I? What is allowing me to do this? I'm just Dante, okay? Why am I to go? Who allows me to? I am not Aeneas. I am not Paul. Neither I nor any man would think me worthy. And so if I should undertake the journey, I fear it might turn out to be an act of folly. You are wise, you see more than my words express. As one who unwills what he willed, will change his purpose with some new second thought, completely quitting what he first started. So I did, standing there on that dark slope, thinking ending the beginning of that venture I was so quick to take at that start. Okay. All right, so Dante says, this is the end. My journey's over. I'm not worthy. And he pulls up two figures, Aeneas from mythology, and from Troy, the story of the Trojan War and the great Virgil's Aeneid. And then he pulls up Paul, who was the turning point for the Christian faith. Remember, it was Paul, or think of him as like the 13th disciple, who was persecuting Christians, struck blind, and then completely turned his life around, devoted it to following Christ and making sure that word got out there. And sometimes by his own force of will, he was able to keep that faith going and faith alive. These two men, Dante says, I'm no match for these guys. They had great journeys. They suffered great things. They were able to find the courage to get through that. I'm just Dante, okay? I have nothing like that I can rely on. I don't have the faith that you think I do. And Virgil stops him, and he says, if I have truly understood your words, the shade of magnanimity replied, your soul is burdened with that cowardice which often weighs so heavily on man. It turns him from a noble enterprise like a frightened beast that shies at his own shadow. To free you from this fear, let me explain the reason I came here, the words I heard the first time I felt pity on your soul. There's again the word pity. I was among those dead who were suspended, in other words, limbo, when a lady summoned me. She was so blessed and beautiful, I implored her to command me. With eyes of light more bright than any star, in low, soft tones, she started to address me in her own language with an angel's voice. So this is the beautiful Beatrice, whose name Beatrice represents the Beatitudes. These are the kind of the Sermon on the Mount that Christ gave, where he talked about, blessed are these, blessed are these, blessed are these. Beatrice wraps up all the things that are best and brightest in mankind, and Virgil recognizes this in her voice. It's an angel's voice. And so she speaks to him, and she says, O noble soul, courteous Mantuan, whose fame the world continues to preserve, and will preserve as long as the world there is. My friend, who is no friend of fortune's, strays on a desert slope. So many obstacles have crossed his path. His fright has turned him back. So we remember back to Dante's past, how he was exiled from his own country, how he was kicked out, how his fortune was taken from him, and how he's really having a hard time with this. And she calls him my friend, who is no friend of fortune's. In other words, even God, even the heavenly realm has recognized the suffering that Dante has. It's a little egomaniac here, but I think it's proving his point. Again, we have that word pity. Okay. I fear he may have gone so far astray from what report has come to me in heaven that I may have started to his aid too late. Now go, and with your elegance of speech, and with whatever may be needed for his freedom, give him your help, and thereby bring me solace. I am Beatrice, who urges you to go. I come from the place I am longing to return to. Love moved me as it moves me now to speak. And again, remember we said Dante sees Beatrice as an ideal. She's an idealization of perfection for him. This is why she takes this form. She's heavenly, she's angelic, and she is moved by her love for him. We have no clue over whether or not Beatrice actually reciprocated Dante's love. She died too early for us to really discover, did they have any magic between them. So she is speaking to Virgil, and she's saying, look, he's someone that I love greatly, and I am greatly disturbed. I am moved by my love for him. I fear it's too late. And she understands that Virgil is the one poet that Dante can recognize, that can truly put his trust in. And I'm going to talk a little bit as we go through this part. There are two, again, we're talking dualities all over the place here, but two dualities here. There's a belief in philosophy and reason, and then there's a belief in poetry. And as a poet, Dante respects Virgil, and he respects the possibility that poetry can take us places that philosophy can't. We talked a little bit about that struggle between the mind and the heart, and what's inside of you, and how that sometimes creates conflict, and what calls upon the will, those passions. The poet represents the spokesperson for those passions. He intermediates between the mind, the logical philosophy, and what's feeling in the heart. And so Virgil has great respect from Dante, and Beatrice knows that. That's why she chooses him. So I'm going to skip a little bit of that section and get to a little more of Virgil talking. A gracious lady sits in heaven. I'm at line 94. For what happened to the one I send to you, and her compassion breaks heaven's stern decree. She, called Lucia, and making her request, she said, your faithful one is now in need of you, and to you I now commend his soul. So Beatrice says, I'm not the one who came up with this idea. Saint Lucia, who's a patron saint, and in the Orthodox Church, Lucia was a great spokesperson for God. She was ultimately martyred because she refused to give her flesh over to prostitution, which was being used as her punishment, and she was finally, ultimately, they tried to burn her. It didn't work, and finally they were able to kill her by stabbing her in the throat. And so she's a great saint, but she has called upon Beatrice to go deliver this. So we have here the beginning of like another trinity. This one is a female trinity. We have the trinity of Beatrice, Saint Lucia, Saint Lucy, whose name literally means light. We have the Beatitudes, we have light, and then we'll have mentioned in a little bit Rachel. Now, Rachel is the saint within the church who mourns, who weeps. She weeps for the innocent, or the slaughter of the innocents. So when Christ was born, when Herod heard that there would be a king born, he decided to prevent that. He was going to slaughter all the children under the age of 6, okay, throughout his kingdom in order to prevent one of them from rising up. It's referred to in the church as the slaughter of the innocents. And we hear Saint Rachel, or we hear Rachel weeping for the souls, the children who were slain before their time. So Rachel is a great saint, a great intermediary for those who suffer. And so these three women together will voice and give Beatrice the power to go summon Virgil and to help guide this good man, Dante, or at least he sees himself, he paints himself as good by the end, or worthy by the end of the story, to make this travel. So I'm going to continue on and try to finish this through. Where are we? Okay, Saint Lucia, the enemy of cruelty, hastened to make her way to where I was, sitting by the side of ancient Rachel, and said to me, Beatrice, God's true praise will you not help the one whose love was such it made him leave the vulgar crowd for you? Do you not hear the pity of his weeping? Do you not see what death it is that threatens him? Along that river the sea shall never conquer. There never was a worldly person living more anxious to promote his selfish gains, and I was at the sound of words like these, to leave my holy seat and come down here and place my trust in you, in your noble speech that honors you and all those who have heard it before. So the flattery for Virgil continues. The women again are begging him to help. When she had finished reasoning, she turned her shining eyes away, and there were tears. How eager then I was to come to you. This is Virgil speaking. And I have come to you just as she wished, and I have freed you from the beast that stood blocking the quick way up the mountain of bliss. So what is wrong? Why? Why do you delay? Why are you such a coward in your heart? Why aren't you bold and free of all of your fear? Dante is speaking to us here. What stops us? What stops us from doing those things that we know may be in our best interest, may free us up, may allow us to achieve our dreams? What blocks us? What does that fear look like? Why can't we confront it? We have the support of those better than us, our loved ones, okay? We have that support. What stops us? And he continues, why aren't you bold and free of all your fear when three such gracious ladies who are blessed watch out for you here in their heaven's court? And my words too bring promise of such good. As little flowers from the frosty night are closed and limp, and when the sun shines down on them, they rise to open on their stem, my wilted strength began to bloom within me. And such warm courage flowed into my heart that I spoke like a man set free of fear. Oh, she, compassionate, who moved to help me, and you, all kindness and obeying quick, those words of truth she besought with her for you. You and the words you spoke have moved my heart with such desire to continue onward that now I've returned to my first purpose. Let us start, for both our wills joined now are one. You are my guide, you are my Lord and teacher. These are my words to him, and when we moved, I entered on that deep and rugged road. So this has been enough to steel Dante and to move him and convince him to move onward. And sometimes that's all we need. We need a little bit of that confidence boost to know that somebody believes in us. And this is what I love so much about Dante, is he's confronting us at like our biggest need. These are our darkest fears. We're not going to hell, okay? But we are sometimes going off the pathway that's been laid for us. And that's sometimes a big challenge for us. We need those people in our lives that can give us that confidence. Those guides like Virgil, even those ones that have come before us that may not be present with us, but we know are encouraging us through our memories of them. And that's what Beatrice is to him. So we're going to close Canto 2 with that, and then next time we'll look at Canto 3, and then we'll get into Canto 4. We're about ready to come knocking at the gates of hell and enter in there. And I just want to kind of end with one last thing. Dante must go downward, and the thing about time in this, Dante's very careful. He's not making, like I said, a purely Christian work. He's blending it with kind of this mythological subtext that's running through there. But it's very clear that this voyage, this journey, is going to take Dante 3 days. So again, that number 3 coming up. He's going to begin on Good Friday, which within the Christian faith is a huge day. That's the day of Christ's death. Christ then, as he moves downward. So when Christ is crucified and put in his tomb, he travels downward into hell to release those who have been placed there because they came before Christ. These are Adam and Eve and Noah and Jonah and all the great names from the past, King David, Rachel. All these names that we're filtering in there were once housed in this underworld in limbo. And Dante's going to take us on this journey. It'll be 3 days, there's no mistake. There's the death of Dante as he enters this dark wood, and then there's the resurrection on that 3rd day, on Easter Sunday, where Dante will emerge kind of whole and renewed. And so the story of Easter is the story of Dante, and that too can be our story as well.